This is from the Sevens and Nines on Discord. And Sevens and Nines says, with Wayne Rooney departing Plymouth, do you chaps have any thoughts on why there seems to be a total absence of a successful managerial legacy from Sir Alex Ferguson? Players and coaches who spent the majority of their careers under him seem to have been universally poor. And unless I'm forgetting someone, Steve Bruce has had the best managerial career. Obviously with Fizzer coming a close second. Thank you.
Did you add that in?
I didn't, because Sevens and Nines knows what side his bread's buttered on. Now, this seems pretty remarkable considering Ferguson basically dominated English football for 2 decades. So it is a fair point. A lot of managers, a lot of players who became managers under Ferguson have not really done much. I mean, I suppose the current one, which we're waiting to see how he goes, would be Michael Carrick, who's doing all right at Middlesbrough, but it's very early days, and if he was to not go on and do great things, it would follow this pattern. So, Vish, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, my thought is that, I suppose we can probably throw Gordon Strachan in there as a good manager. Could we?
Is he good?
Is he bad?
No, I think we're talking about managers that have really gone on and done something big with trophies and managed big clubs.
Yeah,
and so on.
Which kind of follows into my next point, which is
some have had respectable managers, like Bruce and.
But is that like a known thing? We have a lot of evidence at our disposal at the moment that suggests that probably isn't a thing. I don't know.
Steve McClaren managed England.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Can't remember that.
Yeah, but he didn't play under Ferguson, though, did he?
But he's an assistant as well.
He's sat next to him.
Well, okay.
Players and coaches who spent their careers under him. He's a coach.
But yeah, is there sort of like a trend usually? I don't think there is really. I think, there's a lot of talk about the family tree of, everything from Cruyff or the influence of Bielsa. And I think a lot of it is fairly spurious. I think even whether it's now or whether it was 30, 40 years ago, to be a football manager, you had to be properly invested in it, that you couldn't necessarily just riff off the influence of your own managers. I mean, like, Roy Keane's probably another good example of this, because it's not just Ferguson, he was under Brian Clough as well. And, are you to say that, the influence of both would have had lend itself that, they're not necessarily good influences as managers? They probably are, but I don't really think it tallies like that. What I do think, that can be an influence in that regard is spending time under a particular manager in a specific position. Mm-hmm. Now, I think of someone like Xabi Alonso, who obviously is, highly respected as a manager and has got a long career ahead of him, but basically played in the position where you had to manage on the field. And I wonder how conducive is that? Like, is it a positional thing where you have to be, I suppose, au fait with the tactics and understand how everything plays out, and because you've lived it, you can then take yourself out and apply it? I don't know if that's a thing.
Well, Brian Robson and Roy Keane have not.
Well, exactly. Well, that's only point. Yeah.
That's also only part of the job, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
A big part of the job is also kind of how you are with people, man management, stuff like that. And I do think it's interesting to point out as a kind of anomaly, really, just because the law of averages would suggest that maybe one or two of them will go on and be really, really good, and they haven't. So that's interesting, just because his longevity, Ferguson at United, and the just sheer amount of top operators as players and as assistants that he had, and not one of them has really done anything where you can instantly grab a name and go bang them.
And just to remind you, it's the majority of their career.
Yeah.
Sure.
My take on this, perhaps to provide a slightly different angle, but I think a relevant one, is that you mentioned Xabi Alonso there. I think that it's now getting to the point, and may have already got to the point, where being a really top player isn't really what you need to be a really top manager. And I think they're now so different as jobs that it's quite tough to make the argument. If you were to take, for example, the Premier League as your Petri dish, your kind of sample size, how many of the current 20 Premier League managers were genuinely top players? Guardiola. Iraola played for ages for Bilbao, but he's not really a household name as a player.
No.
And the only other one I could think of was Ruud van Nistelrooy, who's not doing a great job at Leicester. And he's not really done an amazing managerial career.
I mean, Mikel Arteta, yeah.
I think Arteta's fair.
Arteta probably.
I think
The point is, it's easily in the minority.
Yeah.
And I think that it might well be the case. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just putting this out as a talking point, and maybe for people listening to see what they think about it, is that maybe now to be a top manager, you have to really ply your trade as a coach early, and all your formative learning years must be about coaching rather than about playing. Because I think that it's not a coincidence someone like Kieran McKenna, who couldn't play for whatever reasons, or whatever other manager who hadn't have a playing career, what you want to think of, more often than not, in fact, maybe always, they've been in there as coaches or at least assistants or whatever from a very, very young age and have learned what they're all about and how to do it. And I think that when you're a player, of course, you do get a certain amount of experience in really relevant areas, but you just don't have the time to coach. You can't coach.
Yeah.
You talk about Xabi Alonso being a coach in the field. I get that. Danny Murphy would be the same. Roy Hodgson would give Danny Murphy permission in the middle of the Fulham midfield to change shape and change system and decide what the team needed. But there's loads more to it than that. And I think it's very difficult to find the time to do that.
Well, Ferguson gave his players permission. He wanted leaders on the pitch.
Sure. But I don't think he gave him permission to change the formation of the team.
Maybe not
in the
that
game.
much. Maybe not that much.
And I think that also becomes full circle to what we're talking about yesterday with Wayne Rooney. Like, it's difficult to make the argument now consistently that although you get one or two players who are really, really at the top of their game as players and go on to be brilliant coaches, it's just not that common anymore.
I don't think it was common before, though, was it? I'm trying to think of players from the 90s, like world-class players who, made a good fist of management.
Maybe it's never been common then.
I think Zidane is a bit of an anomaly. He's like, oh, well done, here's Real Madrid.
Antonio Conte?
Yeah, Conte. Well, the other two, also central midfielders, Diego Simeone and Pochettino.
To be honest with you, that's something I actually wouldn't focus on with regards to this question. I think the specifics are being missed here. Ferguson managed an English side. How many great English coaches? I mean, not all those players are English, of course. I know there's a number of them, but not that many. We know there's an absolute dearth of English coaches. I would extrapolate that out to British coaches, although I think, the fact is that Ferguson and Dalglish have won the Premier League. At least two Scots have. So I don't want to be too dismissive of that. But I think, we're on safe ground. So the fact is that you're talking about why haven't many players who played the majority of their careers under Ferguson, which would be, you're more talking about English, British players. Why have they not gone on to great things? Well, you have the whole thing about on this island, we're not good at that. So there's that. Ferguson was also... even though, a very incredibly skilled operator, obviously, but very good at delegating, very good at all this, he was a little bit of a dictator as well.
Yeah.
And there was also a degree of gatekeeping.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not... And also, did he have a footballing philosophy? Not really, which actually served him well. He could move with the times. I mean, Neville used to talk about them as being a counter-attacking side, but the fact is he could change shape, he could change his formations. His team in the mid-90s, so different to the team in the noughties, to the, even sometimes season on season he would change. So the idea of players maybe learning a philosophy under him would probably not be that relevant, unlike, say, if you played under Bielsa or Johan Cruyff, for example. But also, it was the strength of his personality, which was huge. And not everybody has that personality. No. But also, if you look at Sky Sports, The Overlap, they always take the piss out of Gary Neville, don't they? Well, you're still scared of him. You're still, and there was an element of him having his little pupils, and that worked for Ferguson. He didn't want them to become too big for their boots. So I think there's a lot there in terms of the specifics of the situation. So the specifics about Ferguson are, I don't think he was that bothered about growing coaches or talking about philosophies. It was, I'm the manager, you're the players, you do a job for me, which worked for him, evidently.
Yeah.
But I think that is a big part of this.
It's a good point. And I think also to add to that, if you've only, because the question's about playing the majority of their careers under him, and a lot of these players we're talking about played almost their entire careers under him, if not like Neville, Scholes, Giggs.
Who have had a go at management, even though Neville's very
But they've only
brief.
ever had one experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Under Ferguson.
Which you mentioned, look at Alonso. He played at Real Madrid. And how many different coaches did he play at Real Madrid? Played at Liverpool. Different, not philosophies, different ideas. Different experiences and all that kind of stuff. We say this about English players being limited because they didn't go abroad and play and so on. And now I understand players come here and play a lot, so there's the exposure.
That's changed a lot.
It has changed a bit, yeah. So I think that there's an awful lot of that there. But I think one of the big things, which I mentioned earlier, is the fact that being from this country, you don't have the thinking, you don't have the.
You're not hardwired to consider a career in coaching,
exactly,
while also being a top flight player, which I feel like is more common on the continent.
Right now, Spain is where modern football is. That's almost like the brain of modern football. If you look at the coaches and so on, Spain is almost like the crucible of it at the moment in terms of developing coaches. You look at the amount of players that are from Spain in their league. I'm getting slightly off point here, but just it is that all modern. A lot of the sort of modern thinking and all that. A lot of it, comes from Spain. Influence from other people as well. But look at Iraola. Like, I can't imagine an English coach in the next handful of years. I hope so. I really pains me. I hope with all my might it does, and maybe in the future. But someone like an Iraola coming along, or even someone like Arteta or something, just coming along, taking a side and going, right, this is what we all believe in, and everybody buys into it. I still think there is that.
Eddie Howe kind of did that, didn't he?
Howe is the only.
He did that at Bournemouth. He did do that at Bournemouth.
Okay.
But he was Eddie Howe. Sorry, I can't remember which one of you made this point, but. He was a manager from a young age.
He was a manager from a young age, yeah.
But he had to stop playing because of the knee injury.
Exactly, yeah.
But getting back to Ferguson, I think that you're talking about players who, whether it had been the 80s or the 90s where they were growing up, in terms of managers, there was you didn't have that school of thought really. That,
you didn't
that we've
play
been lagging around.
So if the team, or rather the managers that we're considering here, let's say Keane, Solskjaer, Bruce to a point, the Nevilles, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes.
Yeah, Brian Robson, you can mention.
Yeah, Brian Robson. Their primary goal at Manchester United was winning the trophies that were right in front of them and maintaining that level of success. And there was an element of growing as football players rather than football people. I still remember this. One of the big things that Sir Alex used to put in place was he wanted people to have settled family lives.
Yes.
Which I appreciate. There's a degree of irony with what we understand about certain people so far, or since.
Yep.
But I still remember this. Johnny Evans' partner, his girlfriend at the time, was working for Granada, I think, or ITV, and she was covering on the production side a Champions League press conference that Johnny Evans was in, and someone told Ferguson this, and he used that press conference to drop in that. His Johnny's really settled, and he's got a lovely girl. I think she's here actually, so surely only a matter of time because he proposes to her and stuff like that.
He was isn't it?
Yeah,
he was a dictator. Yeah. And very manipulative. Let's not be silly.
Yeah, but there was also an element of you saw out your kind of home life and be better footballers. For me, there was never really that kind of I want to raise these people and send them off into the world, because by and large, because of the nature of football at the time, they were kind of well-rounded. He knew what he wanted from the people outside.
And none of his players graduated to be his assistant, did they? Over his entire time there.
Yeah, which is kind of an interesting thing, yeah.
I think that's quite a weird anomaly as well. I would also add in there, you talk a lot about the players who've tried to be managers, but it's worth pointing out actually as well, just an added thing at the end of this answer, that there's going to be plenty of top players under him who never wanted to be managers.
Yeah, of course.
And the Jamie Carragher story about that is quite interesting. They didn't play for Man United, but the same kind of thing. Top player for Liverpool for years, one of their record appearance makers. I asked him why he never went into management. He said, because I and a load of other players around me just look at it and go, it's an absolute mugs game.
Yeah,
I got used to winning things.
I get that
I was
point.
never going to win anything as a manager. I don't think I'm ever going to get the Liverpool job. I don't want to move my family away. It's very, very difficult to be successful, and I'm used to being successful.
Sure, but an awful lot of people, a lot of players who played the majority of their careers under Ferguson have had a go at management, and that's an interesting one.
I think a part of the reason for that, Marcus, is that actually, and it's almost Wayne Rooney's a bit like this, it's enough. They don't know anything else. Yeah. They're desperate to stay in football.
But Rooney's an interesting one because, by a lot of accounts, he did try and play quite a progressive style under Plymouth. It just was the wrong job. Yeah, but and Rooney now, he's got to be careful. I think he's probably taken the wrong jobs Birmingham you've got to look at and think,
But I don't know what the right job is for him.
Well, indeed, I don't know, but it's a bit like with Frank Lampard. We haven't seen him for a little bit, and there was the Norwich job where they were like doomed for relegation in the Premier League a couple of years ago, and he didn't take it. And I remember thinking, I think that's a good decision.
Yeah.
You've got to be careful with the jobs you take.
I think some of these players, maybe this is harsh, you'll tell me if it is, some of them do genuinely want to be managers.
Yeah.
Frank Lampard be a good example, I think. I think some of them are desperate to stay in the dressing room and stay in what they know and stay around the game. And
Possibly, but
that's what motivates them more than anything else.
But I think Rooney cuts a different figure, and we're seeing that.
I'm not sure. I think I love Rooney's sincerity around football, and there is such a genuine love and a want to still be involved. But he wants to be a revered manager. And I don't know if he knows the work to put in and also is capable of putting the work in to get there.
Yeah.
Because you said it's not an ideal job. It probably, I think his Championship is probably above him right now as a manager. So
Yeah. Well, it certainly appears so. Well, yeah, as I say, just to recap, I think that the dictator element of Ferguson and no particular philosophy, that's certainly not a dig, by the way, the second point.
It's a good question, though, isn't it?
But I think those
it's not got a definitive answer.
No, indeed.
Yeah,
but
talking about.
it is apparent, though. So, yeah, 7s and 9s, you've got to really think in there. OK, let's have a little break.
All right, this is from TJ90 on X. Thought we weren't doing questions from X anymore, but here we are. Clearly a supporter of free speech.
Yeah.
TJ90.
Well, this question will be the truth.
No, actually, yeah, we'll only take questions from people who are verified on X.
yeah,
Because they paid the musketeer.
That's right. Yeah, you've got to fund that man and his ideas.
Yeah, you're all right by us.
or prove that you own a Tesla.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Attach a photo of a Tesla and we'll read out your question.
If you own one of those little tanks, what are they called? The
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck. Come right in.
Yeah. TJ90 says, sorry about that, TJ. Thanks for getting in touch.
Yeah.
With Aston, genuinely.
TJ90's got
Thanks
nothing to do with the musketeer.
Thanks for listening, yeah. With Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, and even Fulham/Bournemouth making a charge on the top 6. Come on! Plus Brighton in recent years. Are we actually seeing a shift away from the big 6 with other teams able to compete? Or is it just because City and Spurs and teams like that are underachieving? Really good question.
It is a good question.
I'll kick us off, will I?
Go on,
and just say that I feel like this is a combination of two things for me, and I'll do my answer very brief and pass on to you guys.
Manchester United and Manchester City.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of teams going and managers and clubs going through cycles and it's almost like stars aligning. So if you think when Leicester won the league, I'm not taking anything away from them, but I think it's important to stress that the context is that a lot of other top teams were transitioning or underachieving or had lost their way with their manager or whatever, which gave them the opportunity, which they took, and it's amazing they did, but it needed to happen for that to be in place. So I think for things like at the moment, as we record this, are Man City coming to the end of a cycle? Probably. Are Man United in a shit state? They are. Yeah, Spurs are struggling. Those things clearly need to happen for there to be an opportunity. But I also think the second reason, which partly informs the first and is possibly more interesting, is I think it might be partly to do with the sheer amount of games the top teams play now. I think it's a bigger advantage than ever to not have a European competition in your season, like a Newcastle or a Fulham or whatever it may be. It makes a huge difference. I think it made a big difference to Leicester in 2016. I think it makes a big difference to these what TJ90 is calling non-traditional teams in this season as well. Both those things together mean I think we are seeing a bit of a shift, which would be beautifully ironic, by the way, because what this was designed to do, these endless new competitions, was to essentially see off the Super League and make sure the bigger teams make as much money as they can. If this starts hurting the big teams, I think that'll be delicious. It'll be absolutely delicious.
It will be delicious. Vish, did you want to jump in there?
I think.
What do you make of those 2 points?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think the fact that you cited Newcastle is a good example of, you want to get into the Champions League and then you get it and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, deal with this. Like Aston Villa are going through it a bit right now, I also think just the amount of money in the Premier League at the moment, because it's gone up incrementally, is given those particular teams mentioned a chance
means they can get players
to flex and get players. I think of someone like Evan Nielsen as a good example, like literally scored a Champions League hat-trick for Porto last season, and Bournemouth were able to buy him for 40 million.
Yeah.
Like that is a
Good
lot
wages
of money.
as well.
Yeah,
But the
decent
size of the
wages.
clubs.
Yeah,
it's
and
mad.
Bournemouth actually, like, they've kind of gone out under the radar for a while now, but Bournemouth have always had money. They've always been able to spend money and take risks that maybe other clubs of their stature haven't been able to take. But you know, they're vindicated in, you know, being able to go for Iraola and kind of even just selling him the project of like, look, we're going to back you. We're going to spend money.
Yeah.
Okay, we might lose Solanke at the end of the season, but don't worry. Here's a £40 million striker with Champions League experience. You know.
Yeah. And they made profit on that transaction there.
Yeah,
Solanke went for 50% more than that.
So they are in a situation like those kind of clubs are in a situation where they're able to cherry pick around Europe, which I feel like it's probably at its strongest now. Even you know, the way Forest did their business, you know, whether it's the players they've signed this time around or when they had to get a load of, you know, all those players in because they essentially got promoted on a squad primarily made up of loan players. Like, you know, we're in a situation where they have, like, Forest now have a really good squad, and part of it is by accident, but also by design, and that design has been allowed or been facilitated by a decent amount of money. Now, obviously, they've got to spend that money wisely. That's, you know, the reason United are where they are, because they haven't, Manchester United. But yeah, I think that's also a factor as well. And, you know, like Brassel always jokes about it, but we always take the piss out of Brassel when he talks about the Conference League. It should always be won by English teams. And the point he's making is really, like, you look at all those teams and they actually feature quite high up on, like, the, you know, richest teams in the world, you know, certainly in the top 20. So it's not a surprise in that regard, but there's still a lot of things they have to do to get right, to make use of that strong position.
But just, obviously Marcus was coming, but on that point he made about Evan Nilsson specifically, as an example of the fact that lower non-traditional teams, to use the terminology, can get a top player. They can only get that top player because a traditional Premier League team doesn't want that player, though. So they're still very much playing second fiddle.
Well, no, but I think PSR comes into this now because a Premier League, a top Premier League side is not going to go for Evan Nilsson because it's seen as a gamble. They want a more established player, or certainly someone with a little bit more evidence, perhaps that they're going to be top tier, top four or whatever.
But PSR is linked to the amount of money you turn over and stuff.
Yeah, it is. But PSR, I understand that. But PSR has also changed it ever so slightly. The big clubs, yes, they spend an enormous amount of money, but it's the Premier League's kind of. I mean, we all thought when Newcastle United, you know, had the takeover from the Saudis, we thought, oh my goodness, they're just going to it's going to be outrageous. But it hasn't been, and PSR's kind of curbed them a little bit. But I'm getting slightly away from it there. I think what that has caused, though, is yes, clubs have got money, and Vish is right to make that point, and to kind of add to that as well. They've got the money, but also they have to be a little bit more wiser due to PSR. You can't just spend, and like it used to be. I think quality recruitment is also goes into it as well. We know what Brighton have done over the years. You have to give them credit.
Brighton's the best example of that.
Brighton is the best example of that. But Fulham as well. Canny appointment getting Marcus Silva when they got him and they were in the Championship. I couldn't believe my luck. And Bournemouth getting Iraola, less experienced than Silva, but it goes down to that really, the really good recruitment and also getting a manager in. And that goes into Vish's point is they have the money, these clubs, to go and get someone, and if it clicks, it does. Now, it just happens to have clicked at Bournemouth. If Van Nistelrooy keeps Leicester up and that clicks, they'll have the money, and then maybe they could have a charge. But
they're skinned though, aren't they?
Okay, fine. But but they stay in the league. I don't know. I've just picked them as
but
one.
I think, that brings us all back around to our point about transitions and
yes, it's the shifting sands of the Premier League.
Because actually, all this comes back to the point I was making about the situation that these other top clubs are in. Yeah. Because you can talk about Iraola, and we can talk about Silva, we can talk about Hertzler, and we can talk about Nuno, right? In another world, in another situation,
it doesn't work out for Nuno. They get relegated last season.
Or a big club takes them.
Well, yeah, indeed.
And they have to start again.
But I think your point earlier about
there's a pecking order.
The shifting sands of the Premier League. I mean, Man City. Look at Man City. As I said, the empire's fallen for me. Manchester United, well, I mean, the empire is in the history books now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's incredible.
They're on ESPN Classic.
They are.
That's where they are now.
But you look at the Premier League table.
I'm just shooting to Netbusters.
I understand the question.
They're on Nickelodeon.
I understand the question was about the top six. Well, there was chat about Arsenal not really being, for a bit under Wenger. I know they're second now, and Liverpool are on for the title. Well, lest we forget, Liverpool have won the same amount of Premier League titles was as Blackburn and Leicester. So,
Yeah,
even
and your Arsenal point is a really good one, again, because it took them being in a post-Wenger transition for Leicester to be able to win the league.
Well, right, exactly. And we used to talk about top 4. Well, then it became top 6 when sort of Spurs joined that pack. But again, it's not set in stone.
No one talks about that now.
No, they don't. We haven't mentioned it at all. But it's not set in stone, this top 4 or top 6. And with a league like the Premier League, with all the wealth that goes into it and people wanting a piece of the pie, it does change things. And that's good. You don't have a situation where Bayern Munich win it all and it takes Xabi Alonso and his boys to have a remarkable season. You don't have it where, in Italy when Inter won loads. I understand Man City have won 4 on the trot. They're not going to win it this season. And I know only a few clubs can. But actually, I think it does make it a bit more interesting with it sort of shaking around. And you don't often say that about the Premier League, to be fair. We've been worried that it was locked in. And I think this is really healthy for the league that this stuff's happening.
It's healthy for the league in the short term to medium term, but I don't think it's how it's going to stay in the long term. There's like a Chris Rock bit.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Yeah, you're right.
And the wealthy clubs will still come to the fore eventually.
Yeah, when I say it's healthy, I mean for the fans watching, and but whether the finances, whether it will completely
We're talking about
itself.
We're talking about the breaking up of a hegemony rather than people winning the league, because City have dominated it. And it remains to be seen what the reasons for that are and what will come off the back of it. And like you say, Marcus, it's probably gone to shit and rack and ruin anyway. But we're talking about teams, competing at the top end of the table, and that is happening at the moment. And that, you're right to say that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless we forget, it wasn't that long ago that the aforementioned Leicester City did the most remarkable thing in the history of team sport.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Vish, you've got the next question.
I do, and it's from Khalid on email. I'm sure football pet peeves have been asked before, but I want to open this can of worms again. Yeah, why not?
It's New Year.
Think of it as a New Year's resolution you wish you could see enacted in football. So what is your biggest pet peeve in football that you would love to see eradicated?
Well, of course, Andy, Pete and I did New Year's resolutions on New Year's Day, we talked a bit about this as well. But Luke?
Mine would be, and I've banged this drum for a while, mine would be how long it takes to take a set piece in the Premier League, particularly free kicks, but also penalties, direct free kicks, I mean, because I think it's anathema to what the Premier League's all about, which is quite fast-paced and ebbing and flowing and real kind of tempo. And there's just absolutely no need for it. I think it happens really, really badly in international tournaments as well. Partly my assessment for that would be because I think it's a load of different types of referees refereeing the game in their own way they're used to, having to participate in a whole new set of not rules, but like the way the rules are implemented, because they focus on different things for World Cups. And I think the whole thing just gets slowed down. It's happening in the Premier League more and more. For example, I timed a direct free kick during one of the games in the 2022 World Cup. I forget which game it was now, but I remember doing it because
was it involving Argentina?
I was fuming about it at the time, and it took 2 minutes and 30 seconds for a free kick to be taken.
Emi Martinez, definitely.
Yeah, right, and I think it never used to be like this, and I don't think there's any reason why it has to be like this. And if you think of the way that a penalty is awarded now, you've got VAR, which doesn't help on every penalty. You've got complaints from defensive players. You've got referees wanting to do whatever they want to do, and then you've got all the other stuff that comes along with it. With free kicks, it's setting up the wall, it's measuring the wall out, it's this, that, and the other. I would urge everyone to watch the penalty scored by Glenn Hoddle in the 1982 FA Cup final replay between Spurs and QPR.
Oh, what a reference!
Right.
Okay.
The penalty is awarded for, I can't remember the player. I think it might be Terry Fenwick for QPR, takes down Tony Curry as he runs into the penalty area. And it's a cut and dried penalty decision. He slides tackles him, he misses the ball, mistimes it, takes him out. It's a penalty. Referee gives a penalty. The penalty is taken so quickly that it's not shown on the TV because they're still showing a replay of the foul. Right? Honestly, you time it. I think it's something like 11 seconds. The ball's in the back of the net from Hoddle. Right? Now, the football's different now. I get that. And I'm not saying it could be that quick. I totally understand it can't be. But it can definitely be a lot quicker than it is.
Mate, you could have a shot clock. Imagine that.
Yeah. Well,
he's given the penalty. You got 20 seconds. Right, quickly, come on.
I don't think that's a bad idea. Because I just think now.
Imagine the shit housing, though. Booting the ball away.
But from a real like genuine tactical point of view, though, if you are a direct free kick, for example, is supposed to be an advantage to the attacking team. If you're the defensive team, and you know what I was like when I was playing, I'd be doing the old
I remember.
dark arts as much as possible. I'm delighted there's a direct free kick because we're stopping wave after wave of attack.
Yeah.
We can all reset. We can take a couple of minutes, literally in some cases, to find out where we are. Right? And we can completely derail the tempo of the game. The amount of times now, if you watch a Premier League game closely enough, you see the tempo and the momentum of the game totally shift for what is supposed to be an advantage being awarded to an attacking team. So to me, it's a little bit frivolous when you start thinking about it and think, oh, stop moaning about it, you old bastard. But actually, there are meaningful parts of it that make the game worse. And I think they could, shot clocks may be a bit extreme, but the referees could be a bit hotter on it. Okay. They could just start dishing out yellow cards.
Cool, that's a good peeve, that. Good peeve.
That's the peeve for me.
Vish,
free kicks and penalties.
What's your peeve?
Players getting booked for taking their shirt off.
Yeah, nice.
Don't like it.
Yeah, I can get. I think
it's unnecessary.
What is the reason for it? I've never been given a satisfactory answer for that.
Well,
I don't know.
We're anti-nipple in the Premier League.
We shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I know we shouldn't be.
But
if there was a message, maybe wasn't there a?
I think that's it, wasn't it?
There was, Robbie Fowler would often write. Was it Robbie Fowler? I think he almost certainly. I can't remember who, but players were writing.
He did a message supporting the striking Dockers in Liverpool docks once.
Yeah,
and he got
booking.
Yeah, deserved.
But the only answer I've ever been given on that, and this might be my complete ignorance, was that. It's in some cultures and some countries it's seen as offensive, and football's it's a global game.
Yeah, but that was introduced when it wasn't the global game in terms of TV. We wouldn't think about it.
I thought it's just listed as an excessive celebration for no.
Well, I understand diving in the crowd, which
100%
is enjoyable, but there's a dangerous element to that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so on.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Diving in the crowd.
Well, if you encourage the crowd to come down,
yeah, of course, yeah. No, I get that.
That's what I mean.
But the annoying thing is, that was only I was thinking about it when we saw these questions. That did annoy me, and then I mentioned this to a mate of mine, and he came back at me with this incredible stat that Mo Salah has received more yellow cards for taking his shirt off in celebration against Manchester United at Anfield than Manchester United have goals at Anfield.
That tells you what you need to know.
Oh,
6 years, I think, yeah.
I'm sure that'll change tomorrow. But apparently the first rule took effect in 2004, which is later. I always thought it was the 90s.
Yeah, well, I remember it being later, yeah.
It was designed for a few reasons to curb time wasting as much as possible.
Well, that's
because I suppose if they take the shirt off and they
but I've just told you why I don't give a shit about time wasting.
Also, an act considering it's considered to be unsportsmanlike as well.
I genuinely think one of the most amazing parts of that Ryan Giggs goal he scores against Arsenal in the FA Cup
chest wig
is when he's twirling the shirt around his head. It's just pure joy. You can't believe he's done it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's amazing. And why would you want to curb that?
Well, indeed.
I totally agree with you, Vish. I do think that, to get Alan Partridge about it, where does it end? People are going around with the old cock and balls chopping around.
Yeah, but again,
why not?
If it's an evening game.
Right, everyone. We're halfway through the second half, so now you can get your cock and balls out.
No, it's a 5:30 kickoff. You're getting confused. It's winter. It may be dark. It's only 6 o'clock. People are watching this.
Remember, is a yellow ball or what? Nothing. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
Put it away.
Yeah. So shirt, yes. Shorts and pants, no. What about if you loudly by the pitch side mic shit yourself as a celebration?
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Oh dear.
You can host match of the day when you do that.
You got to have a break now for that, surely.
Indeed, yeah. I suppose mine would be England losing. If you want to hear more about our New Year's resolutions, catch our special episode all about our New Year's resolutions for football in 2025. Of course, I was on there with Petey and Andy for that. Andy had some good ideas. Pete had some innovative ideas.
I think that's probably why you chose that lineup, wasn't it? Andy can actually do the interesting shit, and who knows what Pete's going to say.
And mine are quite predictable. All right, quick break. Got an email here from Joe, and Joe says this: I'd love to know your thoughts on the transparency managers are required to have during pre-match press conferences. It's become somewhat of a trend for managers to give nothing away when asked about player availability. Arteta even calls injured players into the dressing room just to play mind games with the opposing manager, which is quite nice. There have been some press conferences lately where hardly any of the questions are answered openly. It begs the question, what's the point in pre-match press conferences? How extreme will this trend get? Should managers be allowed to keep their players' availability a secret?
Yeah.
I can see you've got some strong views on this, Luke.
Yeah, kind of. I think that the reason for that, I mean, Vish is an actual journalist who will know much better than me, but the reason for these happening is because, people need information to write stories, and that is still important even in the modern world in which we live. And I think it's actually quite interesting that you have to really flex your muscles as a journalist to get an answer that you want out of a manager, or kind of find out what makes them tick and get into it. It's almost a bit like, when a detective's interviewing a suspect, and the suspect is legally allowed just to no comment every question, but I dare say that a really talented detective can rank the pressure up and get an answer that he wants sometimes. And that's really the analogy I would use for this. The point of them is that they are part of the kind of media / entertainment industry kind of ecosystem, and they're important. In terms of the teams being announced, I know that this season they've changed it to 75 minutes before kickoff rather than an hour. I think it was last year, wasn't it? So I don't know why they've done an extra 15 minutes. I'm not really sure. But I think it's part of the cat and mouse of journalists kind of earning their stripes and managers showing another part of the job that they have to be good at. And to me, that should stay. I think clearly the most interesting copy you'll get from a manager will be after a game or around a particularly fraught set of circumstances around a player leaving or a controversial goal or whatever. But these things these pre-match interviews or press conferences are part of the process. They do have to be done. Otherwise, and the reason for that, Joe, I would say, is because otherwise you're going to fall into the trap of clubs being able to entirely dictate the messaging they put out to their fans and to the wider football community generally just on a Twitter vid or a TikTok vid or something like that, and that doesn't give you any scrutiny whatsoever. So for every 99 flat-batted questions, there is going to be an interesting one, and I think that alone makes it important.
Yeah, it's I think it's quite perceptive of Joe to, I think, be aware of how much isn't being said in a press conference, because generally you only get the snippets and whatever's quotable is used in the papers and clipped up and whatever, because certainly I find, even in my job now in cricket, having previously done football, there are some press conferences that are just an utter waste of time. And you only really... Does it
make you reconsider wanting to be a man of the bat still?
Well, no, because so this is going to be a bit of a boring answer, but basically, often in those situations, there will be a public press conference, there'll be a written specific press conference, which is basically when the cameras go off, which is when the managers or players are a bit more forthcoming, because they're not just talking to everyone, and actually it's a bit more intimate. It's like 7 of you with your dictaphones on a table, like sat down with them, rather than them up on a platform, you in the audience kind of thing. And it's, there aren't any cameras in that situation, so they feel a bit more comfortable and stuff like that. The lying, though, I kind of see it as like par for the course. As Luke was saying, they can do these things and not answer questions. They can lie about it to a point, because, people, if they string enough lies together, you're just not going to believe a single thing they say, and they've completely fucked it for themselves anyway. But particularly with injuries, and often with transfers as well. Transfers is often an easy get out because, it's being sorted out or you don't want to talk about it. But a lot of times, Arteta does it, Klopp did it. Sir Alex Ferguson used to do it, being really vague about recovery times and things like that. Often when it's really bad, being like, so-and-so is progressing well. I think one of the things that came out from Arteta's press conference on Friday morning was, that Ben White is within a month of coming back. Like that kind of thing, you can use it to like tease better news stories, but, he might not be back in the next month or so.
Well, then you just say he's had a setback or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So... I think because of the nature of football at the moment, I think those press conferences are becoming harder to do as a manager, because
there's so many games as well.
So many games, everything is dissected to a point. Like, I feel like I've seen more Postecoglou press conference clips than any
That's also because he's good value, though.
I do feel for managers a little bit.
Yeah, he is, but often it's like he's not actually really saying much. He's getting annoyed at a question, or he's kind of,
But I think it benefits
grumbling
you.
and saying mate again.
They talk about how the best people think the best spies are like James Bond and stuff like that, but actually the best spies are what they call the grey man, where you go and get what you want, no one remembers you. That's really how you want to be in this as a manager. Yeah. You want to be able to get through it.
I thought Bond did pretty well.
He did okay, actually. Yeah.
I don't know this grey man and if he's done anything.
That's the beauty of it. You don't know.
Oh, okay.
Could be in here now.
Andy Greyman, yeah.
Yeah, very anonymous.
Yeah.
Nowadays, thank
Get
goodness.
your double O's out for the lads. Andy Gray's Bond. That's what we came for. We got there. 40 minutes. We stumbled on it. Great stuff.
Give your golden gun a tweet for the lads.
Gray. Fucking Andy Gray. Who, me? Me. Gray, Andy Gray.
And he said, I'll tell you what, I want that shaken mustard.
And he's got that red button, and I said, give us it here.
Will I press it? Yes, I will.
And I say terrorist, because that's what he is.
He hasn't got a Miss Moneypenny, he's got a Mr. Keys. No, Richard Keys is doing his gadgets.
Yeah,
He's Q, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
What if I
Hey,
was
if you tilt that pen upside down, the clothes come off.
Yeah.
Great gadget. It's exactly what I want.
But if I was to put that pen there, Andy.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah. Our official Secrets Act's getting harder to sign, Andy.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. We got what we wanted.
We got
what we wanted.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Well, quite magnificently, we're going to end with this question. And this is it. I've not just added this. This was in the running order. This from... Did we answer that previous question about press conferences? I think we had a go.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But if anything, we deflected, which is what they're about now.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Everyone came to this show today and got what they wanted.
Especially us.
Particularly us. Yeah.
Oh, dear. But Rayo Toffee wants more.
Rayo Toffee.
Rayo Toffee on Blue Sky once more, who honestly asked us this question, or asked Vish this question. Which Sean Connery film is Vish's favourite?
There we go.
Come on.
So he's not making any more films now.
Yeah.
What?
Because he can't.
He's retired.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
retired a while ago, to be fair.
Yeah.
Before he... hang on, if I may. Before he died, Vish.
Yeah.
I was going to say he went underground, but
In a way.
he got put
Imagine
there.
that. Imagine the next James Bond movie, it's Connery.
Oh, that'd be
Egg
great.
on all our faces.
Yeah.
What is your favourite, though? I know what you're going to say. Can I guess?
Go on.
Are you going to say The Hunt for Red October?
Yeah.
Correct. It's
Do
the correct
you know
answer.
what? I've never seen it.
Brilliant movie.
But he...
Connery is also from, I suppose, a bit before
From
Hunt for Red
Scotland.
October. Yeah. Done a lot of shit.
Oh, yeah. But that kind of length
come
of
on.
career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who's done a lot of shit and it goes under the radar is old Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
My
He'll
goodness.
do anything,
Yeah.
wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Was it Michael Caine who missed picking up his own Oscar because he was filming Jaws 3? So that happens.
Well, how about this? Which is the only film that Connery won an Oscar for the Academy Awards?
Can we have a few guesses?
Of course, I've got loads of time.
So
mate.
he didn't win any for Dr. Noah Goldeneye. Sorry, not Goldeneye, Goldfinger.
none of them are
Dr.
Bond.
Yeah, Goldfinger and Dr.
I'm
Noah.
talking specifically.
Which are
from-
the two best Bond films that he's in. And Goldfinger's probably the best Bond film, I would say.
What about You Only Live Twice?
No.
Come on.
No.
It's a great song, though.
It is a great song, but
Yeah.
it's not a better film than Goldfinger.
I just wanted a little sing song.
I think because I'm going to try and do a bit of 3D chess.
I'd
here.
say this is his best film.
I think you're saying this because it's an Indiana Jones film.
Last Crusade?
Yeah.
Incorrect. He won a BAFTA.
The Rock.
It is not The Rock.
Rock-
Indiana Jones The Last Crusade is definitely one of his best, as is Robin Hood Prince of Thieves on a technicality.
Oh, yeah. He's not even named in that, I don't think.
But this one, I think I would have this as his best film. But I haven't seen The Hunt for Red October.
So there's no way The Rock won an Oscar. I don't know what I'm talking
No,
about.
yeah.
Michael Bay. There must be The Untouchables.
Correct.
Yeah. Do you know why? Because I got it up in front of me.
Oh, that's cheating!
No, I didn't Google Oscar. I just Googled Connery movies. I'm trying to think of one.
It's not in the spirit of it.
Yeah.
Eh?
He's brilliant in.
No wonder Vish has got all the belts.
You've got to watch The Hunt for Red October. You have to watch that.
I
You
really
should,
do.
that really should be watching that ahead of the next mailbag.
Yeah, but so
We
you.
watched that in school, weirdly.
Did you?
Yeah.
Great education.
Do you know I've never
Private
seen-
school, isn't it? Probably got him out to probably got him in to reenact it. What did you think of Andy Gray in it? It's not a submarine, is it?
Yeah.
When is it? When is it?
What about Andy Gray and the Medicine Man?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
And I said, take your Calpol.
And he's looking for October, and there he is on the back post.
And he raises a submarine at the back post. He breaches.
Are submarines getting harder to sink? And thanks for listening to the Football Ramble mailbag, part of the Acast Creative
Take a look
Network.
at my torpedo. I've turned to Finchy from The Office.
I'm similar, man. We're back on Monday with Jim. Please do send us your responses to any of that. Opinions, questions for next week's episode. You can follow us on X, Blue Sky, TikTok and Instagram at Football Ramble. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your pods. But do make sure you tune in, as we do on podcasts. We tune in on Monday because Man United will have gone to Anfield.
Can we just specifically say for the next week's mailbag, give us your best Richard Keys inventions for Andy Gray-as Bond? That would be good. That would be really good.
Yeah, I think that'd be
We
good.
get a section out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Cheers.